done a whole video on Kuku and Sumire's dynamic, and how I think they're one of Love Live's most unique character pairings that have a great arc together. I'll link that video if you'd like to watch it first, but to sum it up, and my thoughts on them in Season 1 as a whole, Sumire and Kuku are both very flawed characters whose actions are understandable, even if they aren't completely justified. Sumire was an insecure girl who didn't believe she deserved the spotlight, and hid all of that behind an arrogant act that pushed people away when she was too good at said act. Kuku, meanwhile, references having a past where she felt all she was worth was her grades, and where her dreams were belittled, leading to her becoming incredibly defensive of them. When Sumire's act makes her seem like the embodiment of everyone that's put her down, she gets defensive, and ultimately outright mean. But in episode 10, Sumire lets out her internalized, and Kuku realizes she's been too harsh. The pair grow closer, only actually becoming friends after this episode, and in the process grow as individuals. We're left with hints that their bond has become a truly close one in the last episode. Season 2 initially had me a bit worried. In the first episode, we get a scene where Sumire asks Kuku what happened with her parents wanting her to go home if they didn't win. Kuku says that they said it's okay as long as they continue to get results, and also threatens to rip Sumire's hair out if she tells anyone, which is a little extreme and raised some red flags for me, but it's Kuku. The show has long established she's nothing if not extreme in everything she does, and how that can be both a good and bad thing, so I don't really consider this out of character or too much for her. However, there were two main issues I had with how Kuku and Sumire were being used early on. They were, for the most part, joined at the hip, and Kuku would seemingly take every single chance to belittle Sumire, even when she's doing nothing wrong whatsoever, which Sumire now points out very often. It got to the point where it felt like over half of Kuku's lines in several episodes consisted of her bashing Sumire. This is something I was worried they'd do going into Season 2. Especially with the increased cast, it would be very easy to flanderize Kuku and their dynamic, reducing them to side characters who revolve solely around this gag. In the process, removing their development and everything that actually made them interesting in Season 1. This worry was complicated by the fact that Sumire in Season 2 was consistently written really well. Like, I would argue she's probably the most consistently and perfectly written character, and that's not knocking anyone else. There's this thing I feel like comes up a lot in media discussion where a character developing or maturing solely means removing traits. A character who's scared all the time learns to be brave. Clearly they must never show fear again, or it's character regression. An arrogant character gets humbled. How dare they ever act arrogant again? Do these writers even know what they're doing? It's dumb, and also not very realistic. Yes, growing and maturing can often mean losing traits, but it doesn't always mean that. An overexcitable young person can often grow into someone that's more subdued, but still has that excitement and passion from when they were younger. Someone who once had a tsundere-ish tendency to blow up at people could grow into someone who's a lot kinder, more comradre than harsh Sun, but they still have a bit of that fire in them. It's just more controlled, comes out in more mature or focused ways, or less often. Or maybe they're better at controlling it, but still aren't necessarily perfect. In short, development doesn't just mean removing traits entirely. Sumire in Season 2, I think, is the perfect example of this. She's still quirky and loud, but she's mellowed out a lot. She no longer has that I'm better than everyone front she once had. Her actions are always genuine, to the point where when she tries to act that way again, she outright struggles to. Her talking about her past was basically a running gag in Season 1. Here it's not. It's no longer something she brags about. Instead, when it comes up, it's her giving relevant information or explaining how it forms whatever opinion she has. There are often times where it's legitimately important to the conversation, like being able to tell when Kanon's been given a fishy contract. Hell, it's basically entirely why she's able to see through Natsume's act. I like this a lot. It's a somewhat subtle detail, but it shows how she's grown. That basically sums up Sumire in season 2 to me. Moments like her trying to encourage Kineko and pulling Kuku aside to be like, "You idiot, I'm not mocking you, I'm trying to encourage her, help me out here." And her joking it should have been her when Ren wins the student council president role again, when it's implied she didn't even actually run this time, really say a ton without ever doing it directly. It's perfect. She is much more aware of what's actually important. She cares about her friends, Liella, and being an idol, and no longer feels the need to put up a front. She's willing to laugh at herself or see the humor in things aimed at her. She's still Sumire, she can still be a bit aggressive and loud, and she still doesn't take anyone directly insulting her, but she's no longer the guarded girl she was back in season 1. Everything we see is Sumire genuinely being herself, and I love that. Kuku is a bit harder to pin down early in the season. For one thing, she's a lot less important than she was in season 1. She's almost never relevant to the plot, compared to season 1, where the first arc was basically just as much about her as it was about Kanon. She's there to idol fangirl and scare potential kohais, but the days of Kuka being the main focus are long gone. Kanon and Kuku barely have any significant interactions this season. This disappointed me immensely, as I had gotten the impression they were incredibly close in season 1. It felt like the show basically showed the two, and eventually her and Chisato, becoming friends, and the equivalent of the typical main trio in the other shows, which makes it disappointing she doesn't do much at all with them this time around. She and Sumire really felt joined at the hip this season, but even with that, Sumire's interactions with other characters tended to feel more substantial. Like I said before, Kuku did get some moments where she and Mei got to be idol fangirls together, which was fun, and she got a lot of moments where she'd almost immediately overwhelm new or potential new members, which was funny and fitting. But beyond that, it felt like all her conversations involved Sumire, and usually had her insulting Sumire. Usually with Sumire pointing out that she hasn't even done anything. She would basically find any excuse to blame Sumire or belittle her, and it just... I don't know. For the first couple episodes, I was really worried. As I mentioned, I feel like Kuku is an easy character to flanderize. Crank up her idol obsession and make it her whole personality, make her only other dialogue mean quips to Sumire, and then, boom, flanderize Kuku. This isn't what season 2 did necessarily, but it's weird. Okay, so as I mentioned, the issue is Kuku doesn't really get to do anything. This is made even more of an issue because in season 1 she was the only character without a true focus episode. That's not to say she wasn't important, playing major roles in episodes 2, 3, and 10 especially, but she never got to be the main focus. We get hints of her backstory and the obvious plotline of her having to go back to China if she doesn't make progress as an idol, but she isn't ever the star. One of my biggest hopes for season 2 was to get a Kuku episode. To the season's credit, she does get one. Despite Sumire being the point of view character in episode 9, the plot revolves around Kuku. In a flip on episode 10 from the first season, where Kuku needed to help Sumire with her insecurities, here Sumire is desperate to help Kuku. They've become close, and we see that Kuku means the absolute world to Sumire. It's a frequent plot point in the season that the first years worry they lag behind the second years in skill. The idea comes up of them not performing at regionals to give the group a better chance, and while it's quickly dismissed by the others, Sumire is conflicted. She knows fully what's at stake, especially with the looming uphill battle of beating wine weighing on them. If they don't make progress and crash out at the same stage as last year, there's a very good chance Kuku will be forced to go home. Not only will she lose her closest friend, but Kuku will be forced to give up on her dreams. Needless to say, Sumire is incredibly worried about this. Not helping matters is the fact that when she tries to talk to Kuku about it, Kuku refuses to reconsider or even listen, saying she wants to just have fun as an idol, and trying to get Sumire to back off by claiming she hates her and that none of this concerns her. Eventually, Sumire takes matters into her own hands, deciding to be the bad guy if she has to, and saying they need to win and shouldn't have the first years compete. When pressed, we get what I mentioned earlier. Sumire trying to pull her old cards, to put on her arrogant, self-absorbed front, claiming it's because she needs to win. She wants to break back into show business and take the spotlight she deserves. Sumire is very clearly trying to hide her emotions like she used to, but but we're repeatedly shown through her body language and facial expression she's bad at it now. She's grown, opened up more. She can't pull off the facade anymore. Ultimately, a pissed Kanon, in a shot framed just like the end of School Idol Project's 12th episode, goes to slap her, before Kuku cuts them off, demanding they stop. Sumire runs off, and we get the scene I'm sure doesn't need any introduction. The first years try and say they're fine not performing. Sumire feels terrible and doesn't want them to not. They're confused, obviously, and then Kuku shows up. She non-aggressively says how Sumire always needs to meddle in things, and that things will be okay. Sumire argues back and finally breaks, telling everyone what's been weighing on her for over a year now, that Kuku will probably have to leave if they don't get results. Then... I feel like I don't even need to say it, but yeah, this is my favorite moment of the season. Love Live has a reputation of being the cute girls doing cute things show with drama. Sometimes it misses, but when it works, God does it work. Kuku tells Sumire she hates her, but she loves her, and Sumire lets out all her stress as she cries into Kuku's arms. Kuku is a character we don't learn much about directly. Unlike the other original 5 Liella members, she's never had a flashback or her past explored in depth. A lot of her backstory and motivations are only revealed in brief lines and moments. In Season 1, she briefly mentioned she was belittled for her passions in the past, and she once considered her grades the only thing she was worth. And of course we learn if she doesn't get results as an idol, she'll have to go back to Shanghai, but that's it. In this episode, we learn her main motivation and mindset. She tells Sumire she just wants to be a normal idol and enjoy it with her friends. Even with this little information, it's incredibly easy to see more details through her actions in the present. It's easy to see how she's had immense pressure put on her for her grades when she's literally able to answer problems in her sleep. Being bullied in the past is why she gets so hostile towards people she thinks are belittling her passion, and wanting to enjoy the present and chasing her dreams without worrying about what-ifs is why she butts heads with Sumire so much. She hates how much Sumire makes her think about that, but loves how much she cares. Kuku has a lot of elements standard for a Love Live main protagonist, like your Honokas and Chikas, but she also can be very mean and very aggressive. She's kind of a jerk at points and is very much a girl of extremes. But that's exactly what makes her so interesting and makes her feel so real. She wants to just be able to live the life of a Love Live protagonist, not worrying about the threat of being sent home weighing on her. Sumire is a much more practical person, even in spite of her own quirks. She's a warrior, even if she doesn't always show it. The two force each other to reflect on themselves and to be better. When Sumire pulls out the tiara Kuku had made for her in Season 1 and says how it saved her, ultimately what it saved her from is herself. Her own insecurities and doubt, her own jerk facade, her own attempts to push people away. In the same respect, we also see how Sumire saves Kuku from herself. In Season 1, Kuku's forced to realize how harsh she's been in her defensiveness of her passions. Sumire makes her realize in this season she doesn't need to hide what's going on, and that they'll support her. It's okay to acknowledge what's happening, and she can't just repress and ignore it, even if ultimately she wants to enjoy her life while she can. They challenge one another, and that's what makes them so close. At the end of the episode, we see their standard bickering, then they both smile. Sometimes you need someone who will challenge you, as long as it comes from the right place, and even if sometimes Kuku hates it, she loves Sumire for it. After this, we get some fun moments with the two. Sumire gets some moments with the first years. There's a scene in episode 10 where Natsume comments on the fact that Kuku and Sumire go from crying in each other's arms to arguing and saying it's a weird relationship, which is very fun. But Kuku potentially having to go home and Sumire's worries aren't really acknowledged after episode 9. But I've already talked about the unnecessarily rushed and incredibly flawed and unsatisfying nature of the finale, and how this plot point is a victim of that. But in that video, someone actually pointed out to me how they do get a scene in the finale where they talk with one another about Kanan potentially leaving, which could easily be referencing how Sumire feels about Kuku, which is cute, and I'm glad it was pointed out to me because I like it a lot. In the end, Superstar Season 2 was a bit of a mixed bag for the pair. Sumire was used magnificently, perfectly showcasing how the longer period of time Superstar takes place during can be used. She retains her development from Season 1 while still remaining interesting and entertaining. It's a great arc, and I came out of Season 2 loving her even more. Kuku, on the other hand, I still like her as a character, and I think she was used alright. Her actions are ultimately understandable, and I don't think she's necessarily been flanderized. But with even more characters joining the cast next season to fight for screen time with, she's very much at risk of becoming idol fangirl and tsundere to Sumire, and nothing more. And her going from almost in a traditional main trio with Kanan and Chisato in Season 1 to barely even interacting with them in Season 2 and them not even reacting to the news she might have to go home was also very jarring and detrimental to her character in my opinion. I still love them both, and their dynamic, but I do hope they're less joined at the hip next season. Nevertheless, at least for now, they remain one of Love Live's most unique pairings.